Hello, it is Friday.
Friday.
Friday, yeah, always Friday. So, welcome back to I Got Board Game. And today we are here to uh, discuss, review a pretty fun game, pretty old game at this point, too. I feel these are all games so far that are probably around when I got into board gaming. So,
Yeah.
so within
Well,
five to 10 years ago,
at least
probably.
last week we did one that was a little more modern, but
Yeah. But okay, so what are we talking about today, John?
today we're talking about Indiana Jones and the Curse of
Indiana
the
Jones,
Temple. Just kidding. What
Indy
we're
the
actually
board
talking
game.
is Escape.
Escape. So this is a
But it's
big
basically this guy.
box game. Big box game. Escape the Curse of the Temple. I mean, I mentioned to you that I think it's funny that the name is like can be two ways, right? It's technically like escape colon the curse of the temple, but if you say it, it's like you're escaping the curse of the temple, which is true also.
That's
Okay,
right.
so to get us started, I'll just do a very quick overview, not even on specific rules, but just overview so you can see how it goes.
How many people play?
Oh yeah, and it plays. It's for 1 to 5 players, and it plays in real time, which I just mentioned to you. So, so the game, the box itself, actually in the time slot, it says like real time. It doesn't even say a number of how long it takes, but I believe it takes around 10 minutes, maybe 15 with setup and cleanup and stuff like that. But so yeah, Escape is a real time co-op game, which is actually like two of the things I really like. And John and I, yeah, you and I played this a lot long time
Mm-hmm.
ago, but we played it a lot and we were experts at it.
We are
We're
master archaeologists or master
oh
explorers or whatever it is. Ye-
yeah. Why do we have to be archaeologists to go into temples? Anyone can go to temples.
because of the picture that I literally just showed. It's this guy. He made this genre. Good old
Okay, so
Indiana
the quick overview. Here
Jones.
we go. This is just a picture of how the game looks like set up. Somewhat set up, mostly set up. And so the basic setup is you're going to have the stack of tiles, which are all the rooms in the temple you're going through together, the start tile here, and you have this ending tile shuffled. Usually, actually, in the rules, it should be towards the bottom of the
it's
stack, kind of
it's the bottom
randomly.
four tiles of the stack.
Yeah, shuffled within those. I think like with it's one of the bottom 5 tiles, right?
Or
So
five,
shuffled
yeah.
with the bottom four. And and so basically you're all going to start here with your meeples representing you. And this game is real time, so there's no turns that you take. You're just going to start going at the same time. And there's an actual soundtrack that comes with the game, like an actual CD that you play that has just kind of this atmospheric music, but also in that track it has a start sound, which is the voice going escape, and then certain parts throughout it having different sound effects like gongs and chambers closing. And those are important because the track is 10 minutes, I believe. So the whole game is, I would say, yeah, like 10 minutes. And during that, you're all going to have your own dice that you can roll. And all the dice are the same. Like they have a torch side, runner symbol, black mask, golden mask, key. And what you're going to do is you're trying to dis- uh, go through the stack of tiles by exploring. And as you explore, you're going to be building out the temple, the path, so it can always kind of end up looking differently to try to find the exit while also rolling the dice, rolling your dice to match symbols on the tile you want to move into to move there. And then eventually rolling the dice like these torches, these number of torches to get rid of these gems, this gem deposit you all share. Because what's going to happen is eventually to get out of the temple, you need to roll a number of keys equal to 1 plus the number of gems that are still here for you to actually escape. And you need everyone to escape, not at the same time, obviously, because you can go separate paths, but eventually you want to find the exit, get rid of enough gems so that you can roll the right number of keys to escape. And so it's going to be this kind of real time, constantly rolling dice to get what you need to keep moving, to get rid of the gems, and to get out within that 10 minutes. And that's basically how the game is going to go. Okay, so back to talking more in detail about what we enjoy about the game, certain mechanics, how certain things work together. You want to start?
Yeah, so I think I may have made myself known about my personal tastes about dice games in general from other reviews, but I think that in this game, the dice really are kind of the key of this type of game. Of the fact that because it's real time, there's a frantic element because you're basically needing to, as we were saying, achieve and get certain symbols as you're going through the temple, not just to explore new tiles, but it's also to move between tiles over time. And then, as we were saying, to actually put the gems away so that you can make the escape easier, as we were just talking about. And the really fun thing about this game is the fact that it is real time. So you have to be constantly moving and rolling your dice to move around. You don't the more time you sit or wait, that's time that you're losing to escape this temple and to get out. And so basically when I remember when we first played the game, when I first started trying it, I felt weird about wanting to roll my dice or feeling like, oh, I'm supposed to keep rolling my dice. Because I was like, wait, aren't I supposed to wait for somebody? Isn't it is it somebody's turn or something like that? But then it's like, no, you have to keep going. You have to keep going. So it's like, oh, I got to keep rolling my dice. I got to keep rolling my dice. This is crazy. And then I think the other thing that's really fun too, or really cool about it is as we were saying, it's cooperative, but sometimes in these kinds of exploration style games, it feels like, oh, you kind of just do your own thing. So they say it's co-op, but you kind of just do your own. But in this game, it's actually really important that you work together because as we were saying and showing on some of the tiles is there's certain values of the number of dice that you need or the symbols that you need in order to open these locations or to do these activities. And you have to work with other players to do that, right? So it actually is forcing you to be like, you can't just win the game by yourself. You are directly dependent on other players to help you out in this.
Yeah, so specifically the case that you're mentioning, that tile behind you, right? That gem altar room. So there are going to be tiles that you come across and you want to come across that have these gem altars because like I mentioned, those are the ways to basically deposit gems from your stash there. Because basically that stash is bad, right? Don't think of having gems in your stash as a good thing. That would be true in a merchant game or something. But in this game, it's like a curse kind of a thing and you're trying to get rid of them so that you can get out of the temple.
You took too many gems, put them back, get out.
And so
things where they belong.
And so in those rooms with the gem altars, there's most commonly there's 3 altars there. And as John said, you need these different number of symbols 4, 7, and 10.
I think it's 10, yeah.
But then you all individually only have 5 dice. So you can never do the 7 or the 10 on your own. But when we mention the game being about constantly re-rolling your dice, you can choose to set dice aside. You don't have to re-roll all of them when you choose to re-roll. And so that's why there is that kind of tension there. I think that's a smart way of adding tension, right? Where again, small detail, you don't always have to re-roll all your dice. And then the second thing is you need other people to roll the same symbols and be in the same room as you. Actually, that's an important detail too. They need to be there with you. You can't just take someone else's symbols from halfway across the board. You have to be in the same place, which makes sense thematically. And then you need to roll those symbols. So you could be holding on to all of your dice could have been keys after a roll. And you're just waiting it's no, we should go for 7 or 10. And you're waiting for the second person in the room to keep rolling. But then as time's going, if they don't get it, eventually you might be like, okay, we're not going to reach 10. Let's just do the 7, deposit 2 gems instead of 1, but also not 3. And then let's go to another room. Because you can only activate one of the altars in the room. You can't activate 2 or 3 of them. You have to choose which one you're going to end up activating, and you mark it with the gems that you move over. So I think that is the really fun tension where you're just like, I got what I need, man. Roll what we need to do. Get rid of the altar. It's like, we're not doing it. We got to go. Because another mechanic that adds to this is, I was going to clarify that this game isn't just 10 minutes of speed rolling, moving around everywhere. There are actually 2 segments within that 10 minutes. So basically, I guess like 3 minutes in and maybe around 3 minutes in again, where you're going to hear like a gong. And it's I think it's supposed to be thematically like some of the rooms are like closing. And so temporarily you all have to get back to the starting room before the doors actually close temporarily. And if you don't, you actually permanently lose one of your dice. Mm-hmm. You just remove it from the game. And so there's those moments where you definitely don't want to take that risk of losing a die. And so, but it could be like you're in the altar room rolling, and then, like you just have like, I don't know how long it is, 10, 15 seconds to then get back to the entrance just for that temporary little rest, And it's like, oh, no, we have to leave now and just come back to this room or something like that.
Yeah. And one of the other things that's also really fun about these dice is we're talking about speed rolling a lot. So we're like, okay, that's not a big deal. Like, yeah, I'll just keep rolling dice and then just get the symbols that I want. But there's 2 fun mechanics about this game regarding that. One is if you're playing on a table and you roll your dice and it falls off of the table, your die is lost and you can't get it back. Once you drop a die off of your table, it's over for that die, which is great because, if you're playing and you're playing frantically and you're trying to like roll like, and these dice bounce, right? So if you're playing on I do recommend playing on a tabletop where your dice can bounce because it's more fun this way, because if they fall off.
It's fun to just hear everyone like start and then you hear all the dice like go.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just fun, and you definitely get that excitement, but it's like, you have to be careful about rolling your dice. Then the other thing about the game, too, is that as we were talking about the different symbols, there is and I don't think the picture's showing it here, but there is a black face on your dice. If you ever roll a die and the black face shows up, basically your die is locked. Right? It's kind of like cursed, but not really cursed because there's another mechanic called cursing, but basically your dice is locked at that point. So what happens is that means you can't roll that die anymore until you roll a yellow mask or idol or whatever on your dice. And then if you roll one of those, what you can do is use that to unlock 2 black faced dice, right? And you can use it for yourself. Cooperatively, you can use it for other players too to help unlock their dice, because there are situations that we've had before where we've rolled and all 5 of our dice faces ended up being black. So you literally can't do anything. You're just stuck there until or you're stuck there, or you can choose to lose a die and then open up all of your dice again. But again, as we said,
wait, is it lose a die?
If you roll all black faces and you
I think it's you can add a gem to the gem deposit.
Oh, was it just add a gem? I thought it was lose a die.
To then unlock everyone's black masks at that point.
It hasn't been a while since I played, so I can't remember.
Yeah,
I thought it was maybe lose a die, but if it's add a gem, then
that's the rule I remember.
But still, that's not a great consequence because it still affects your end game of getting out. Mm-hmm, and it does happen. Like we've played it many times. There were a couple times where both of us were just like, yeah, we're stuck. Guess we have to put that gem back in, and then resume.
And those are the moments too where it's like, okay, if it's like 2 of us playing, then you think like, okay, maybe we should move together. But then that's less efficient because you're discovering the temple slower. But then there's also those cases where it's like someone starts getting black masks and then the other person's like, hold on, stop rolling. I'm going to roll to get gold masks first and help you. And then we'll keep going. But if you kind of just keep rushing at it and both of you get black masks at the same time, that's when you get stuck, right? So it's like there's that moment where you might be like, whoa, stop rolling for now. I'm going to roll first. And
it's like, roll faster. I can't wait for you, man.
And so I did mention this just a little while ago, but I think the way to think about the re-rolling and setting your dice aside, why that's so satisfying is because that's actually the basically like an extended version of the Yahtzee mechanic, right? Which has been kind of popular in games. Like it made games like King of Tokyo super popular, right? Where like in Yahtzee, like you get a certain number of rolls and you can set aside dice each roll to try to end up with the faces that you want, right? And so I think it's kind of like the similar feeling, right? Where you can set aside dice, except in this game, you have unlimited rolls, right? So it's like, I want to keep these for now, and then I'm going to just keep rolling these until I get what I need to keep moving the right way or something like that. And so that might be actually why that's so satisfying. But then, oh no, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say from a dice rolling standpoint, in games with dice, having control of what the outcomes are in a sense, that's what makes it more satisfying. So there are certain dice games where you play them and it's just luck of the die every single roll, and there's little to no control, or literally no control. It's just based on one outcome when you roll the dice.
And John loves those.
I will say there's a particular board game, we'll see if we ever review it in time, in which this has soured my experience. And so we'll see. That'll be
And he
for
hates
another
all
review.
dice. I'm just kidding.
But as you're saying, with the Yahtzee mechanic or other types of dice games where you have a little bit of control and manipulation of the dice, because then it's still a lot of luck, right? Because you do have to roll well, but at least allowing the player to have a certain sense of control, which is also nice to have in a game versus where you're just like, it's all based on the dice. I'm just a bad dice roller, right? And that just kind of sucks if you end up being that way.
And that's also how this game does it differently, right? Because you do hear, I wouldn't call it like a modern mechanic, but I feel like it's something that shows up more now. It's like dice manipulation. And those are usually in strategy turn-based games where it's like, okay, then, maybe even worker placement games where like, I'll send a worker here, so then that gives me the action to change a side of my die, right? And so that's kind of like, I would say, the more common way you see it. But then it's interesting that you put it that way for this, right? That this is also a way of dice manipulation, right? I wouldn't say that way specifically, but like technically, but yeah, it is, right? Where you just get to have as many rolls as you actually want to get what you want. And then that's why that black mask mechanic is so important, right? Because if all the faces were good in some way, then there would not really be any challenge, right?
The game would be relatively easy in the sense of like, you just kind of, basically it's just you keep rolling until you get matches, right?
Yeah.
But because of this, it now forces you to think strategically, resourcefully, because it's not, because as we were saying, like sometimes you let's say you're rolling dice to get the keys and you're in the room and you're waiting for your friend to come in, and so you're kind of preparing yourself, but then you roll like 2 keys and then you roll 3 black faces. So now you have to decide, is it worth it for me to roll the keys that I have already to try to get a golden mask so I can open my dice again, or should I wait? But if I'm just waiting right now, that's time that's passing in which I need to get back to the gong room or like the entrance, or I need to, like try to explore another room. Like let's say it's taking Ben forever to get to my room because he's slow at his dice rolls. So I'm like, oh, maybe then I'll roll out of of the symbols that I have, which is risking it, right? So you have to make and you have to make these snap judgments because you're timed. So you don't have a lot of time to make a decision. You have to do it quickly.
Yeah, and I think those moments are also funny where it's like, you're like stuck in a room and you have most of your dice frozen or something, and it's like, well, I'm gonna need some help. Can you come over? And it's like, okay, just wait for me. You're like rolling.
Wait for me, it's like coming from here all the way over.
Yeah, you're gonna have cases where it's like, oh yeah, like I rolled and ran into another room, but then you're just stuck rolling because you can't get what you need to go into the last room or something.
It's like I need the 2 walking guys, but I'm only getting keys and I'm in this room. This isn't doing anything.
Yeah, it's funny. And actually, I think another funny thing is like a little bit of the strategy we learned, right? Like a small thing that we learned to do was, because as you're exploring, right, that's when you flip the top tile over and put it in front of you, and then you can start moving into it. You're basically building out the temple as all of you are exploring. But then one smart thing to probably do is you might want to build the temple in like a spiral shape, because there's cases where it's like if you have even just like two players going opposite directions from the entrance exploring, one person's going to find the exit and it's going to be on the all the way opposite side of the game board from the other player. It's like, no, you found it all the way over there, I have to run all the way that way. Yeah, I think that's a funny thing though, the modular aspect of the board. And then I think, of course, like the whole escaping part, right? There's a small detail with that of when you find the exit room, it depends on how many gems are in your deposit, right? That you individually have to roll that many number of keys to get out. So in that case, you can't share dice results with each other, even if you're in the same tile. But then once you get out, you get to give one of your dice permanently to another player that's still in the temple, which is a small aspect of being cooperative, right? Which I think is cool.
You get to help out your friend, basically, of being able to be like, you know what, I'm out. So, but before I leave, here's like kind of a way marker. So it's kind of a way to help them get out quickly too. So it gives them a little bit more of, the capacity to get out.
Which can make the difference between like, like you might think like, oh, I'm at the exit and can try to get out, and that other person's like frozen. Like, am I gonna run all the way there, or should I just get out first and give them a die and hope that helps them?
And then
get
they
the
can use
golden
that
mask
die
get
to
out?
roll a gold die to unlock.
Yeah. So and so it's not like hard choices, but it is still basically like usually like one of two choices you always have to end up making while the timer is going.
Yeah, and you just have to make it. There's no pausing. You're not allowed to pause the game in any way, shape, or form. You just got to go. Because the temple's closing. The curse is coming.
I think the way that works is really a good part of the design, right? That it's like this expanding game, but it's always simple, It's always simple and always moving. And so those kind of aspects of it, I think, really help it out. And then aside from, I mean, we've just been talking about like the base game, how the game works right out of the box. The base game also comes with a couple modules. And then when you get any expansions, I think there's like maybe 2 or 3 small box expansions. All of those will add like 2 or 3 more modules. And so when I mention modules, it's just like additional rules, maybe additional components to include when you play. And so in the base game, it comes with, I think it's called curses and treasures. And so treasures are going to be certain tiles that you can add into your whole deck of tiles that you're using to build the temple out during the game. And those rooms will have like a treasure box. And usually I think you have to roll 2 keys while you're in that room to open the box. And that lets you basically draw like a treasure tile, which is like a one-time use item, which could be like extra symbols, like extra keys that you want to just use those symbols for one time or something like that. So that's pretty simple. And that makes the game, in a sense, easier, right? Giving you items that are helpful. But then the curses are what you can add to make the game harder, because those tiles basically have a big cursed idol symbol in the middle. And what happens is when you explore and flip over a tile and it has that symbol, you have to draw a cursed tile. And cursed tiles, I think they usually have like 2 or 3 symbols you have to roll to get rid of them, to like throw away the curse. And I think you can only, don't quote me on this, but I think you can only have 1 curse at a time.
Yeah, like actively running at a time.
I
Something
think
like
so. Because I don't think
it might not
stack.
be. It might not actually be. But there are some fun curses. I think one of them is like you have to play with your hand on your head.
Yeah, you have to play with one hand on your head the whole time. And then there's obviously the one that's you can't speak. And so it's like asking for help or stuff like that. You got to start poking at people like, and so it's stuff like that, which I think is pretty funny. Like I like when real time games do that like add these kind of goofy things that make it more challenging. But yeah, so that's how like curses work. And so that's if you want to make the game harder and funnier, I would say. And so aside from that, I think small details, production, like the tiles are really good. I think this is by Queen Games, which to my knowledge is an older publisher. Like they've been around for a long time, and they have their stuff. I would say usually has like a older kind of art style. Like it's not like super like detailed, like high crisp art, but it's kind of more like it is what I would imagine more like old school family games, like just old timey, good time game to play, that kind of art style. But they do have a lot of games, so I mean, because they've been around for so long. Yeah, I think the tiles are really good. Like, I mean, I've played my copy a lot, and the tiles don't show like scuffing or stuff like that. There's a lot of space in the box to fit everything. The dice, custom dice are nice.
Mm-hmm.
Meeple gems, those are all kind of standard pieces. There is actually, I think, a sand timer also if you don't want to use the soundtrack. But I would definitely encourage using the soundtrack because sand timers in a real-time game, they're an issue because you're all frantically playing, and then eventually you're just not gonna like look at the timer when you should be looking at the timer.
Or like being made aware of the timing. And
Mm-hmm.
thematically, it kind of makes sense too. It's like, it's not the players that should be keeping track of what's going on. It's the temple environment itself that
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
closing in on you and changing things on you. And that's the other nice thing about having the soundtrack is that it just keeps going. So as soon as the gong happens, the players have to figure out whether they lose, whether they lose or die or do whatever they need to do. But the time keeps going. So if you're having to deal with a sand timer, it kind of pauses the game if you're using a real sand timer. But if you're playing with the soundtrack, the time just keeps going, which is kind of a nice part to keep the flow of that real time aspect, in the game, which is very appreciated. I'm sure they have an MP3 file that exists out there, so you probably don't need the actual CD if you have this game. Or if they still sell the copies of a CD in the games, then hey, you have a CD. I wonder if you even have a computer that has a CD player.
I know, right?
So that's not standard.
I mean, I remember a long time ago, I ripped the CD. It's like ripping these little background tracks just so I could use it anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Download it on my phone. But yeah.
yeah. And then I also did end up getting, like back then still, but I didn't really get to play with it because it was kind of toward the end, I think, of when I was playing ESCAAAAAPE. I got one of the expansions, which was called Illusions. And that one, I believe, adds a sixth player, just like the dice and the piece for the sixth player. And then I think the main mechanic, the main module was like tiles that would disappear during those set moments in the soundtrack, like with the gongs. Because basically, like, you shuffle these tiles into your deck of tiles that you're exploring from. But then as you lay them out, you go through them as normal. But then once you go back to the entrance, when those gong sections happen, those tiles actually get removed from the board. So then it can be troublesome, I believe, where you went through an illusion room into an actual room, and then you had to run back to the entrance, and then that bridge between the two rooms is gone. So you'd have to kind of discover a way into
Re-explore
the
it.
room again.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of interesting to see. Like, it's cool how they can include these kind of ideas, all these kind of different modules into the game. And so with that, let us look at our scores for the game. John first.
So I think my overall rating for this game would probably be a 7, I think, overall, in the sense of it's a really fun game. I do enjoy it a lot. I think the overall play style of the game is great. I'm always happy to play the game. I would say the only reason why I wouldn't rate it any higher is because it is a very light game, in my opinion. It's a very just anybody can join in, anyone can play the game, cooperative, fun to play, but there's really not much to the game other than rolling through and doing it. So it's a great game in that sense of having fun, having a good time, but it's also not a game that personally I would feel like I want to go back to all of the time or regularly. in a regular amount, which is why for me, I would probably rate it around a 7. Because if someone asked me or wanted to play it for the first time, I'd be more than happy to play it for the first time with somebody, give them the experience, join in, play it. But for other game, or if I get to choose and have a selection of other games to play, I think typically I would say I would rather play other games overall, just in comparison. But it is a very solid game. I definitely think it's one to play with other people, and definitely one that you would want to keep in your records, on your records. And the other thing about it is that it is very unique, because there's really not a lot of games that are real time like this, kind of moving around really fast and stuff like that. So now as I'm saying this, I might actually change my mind and make this a 7.5. So I'm
You know
actually
what?
using
While you were
7.5
talking,
instead,
I
because I've
moved my
convinced myself
score
that it's
down.
huh?
I moved it down to a 7, and I didn't want anyone to see me do it. But but actually, sorry, a little unfair to you. We didn't take time to actually mention like issues with the game, right?
That is true.
And the main one that comes to mind for me is uh, just a kind of common issue, kind of unavoidable for all real-time games, of the idea of like, is someone like cheating? You know, like, and maybe not on purpose, but you mess up or forget a rule, right? Like I think the main one is like when you're moving between rooms, like there are doorways for the rooms. And so if you discover a room and you place it down and then the doorway leads into the wall of another room, you obviously can't go through that way. But then when you're rushing to get back, you might just roll and think that you can move through that doorway onto that tile, right?
What? You can't phase through walls, Ben? What's wrong with you?
Not in the temple.
Although there is a treasure, I think, that allows you to do, like, create a walk
Oh yeah.
a
That sounds
doorway
familiar. Yeah,
in a secret in a room that doesn't have doorways. But
yeah.
that's again expansion, treasure tile.
But yeah, I think that's kind of the unavoidable negative side that I can think of to it being real time, that you just don't have someone keeping track of all the rules who missed a rule or maybe is cheating in some way
Mm-hmm.
that way. Yeah. I don't know if you had any negatives that come to mind.
Um, other than getting mad at people when they're rolling slowly and not thinking about moving around, yeah, no other complaints.
I think a small one is also like maybe just like the fiddliness of the components. Like there's not a lot of components really, right? It's mostly the flat tiles and they're pretty spacious and you're just moving pieces on it. But like it could be kind of like if you're so frantic, you're gonna be like knocking pieces into other rooms and stuff, then things can kind of get splattered about if you are not careful.
Yeah.
But that's a really small complaint because the game is kind of gives you enough space and the pieces are a good size and doesn't it doesn't just take up the whole tile and then any kind of touching it moves it off the tile, right? So you're not going to necessarily get thrown off a lot by things being knocked around, but people could find that annoying.
That is true.
But okay, sorry, back to the score. Did you have anything else to say with your potential 7.5?
Maybe we'll go with the 7.25 since I did the 0.25 on something else previously as well. I'll go with the 7.25.
Well,
I do think
what
it's
was,
actually.
What was your 7.5 previously?
No. What was 7.5 before?
No. I mean, like you mentioned like a
Oh, I
previous.
was saying like originally I was just gonna say 7 because I think it's just pretty, like once you've kind of played the game, you just know the game. The game is pretty kind of straightforward once you've learned how the game plays. And a lot of it really is just the dexterity and the speed of rolling dice, hoping to get the right dice. And as you said, like there's certain levels of strategy that you kind of figure out as you play the game, like as we're seeing the spiraling, trying to make sure a lot of rooms are connected to make it easier to travel through. So you kind of pick up the game pretty quickly. So it's not a very intensive game from a mind standpoint. So it's a lot of just quick fun, or it's, it has that sense and it has the frantic feel, but it's also not a game that, it's almost one of those games that to me that feels like once I've played it for like a night with friends, unless it's somebody new playing the game, I doubt I would be like, oh my gosh, we have to play Escape again with like a similar or the same group of friends again. Which is why I wouldn't rank.
Only if you lose, right?
Unless you lose at the higher levels, which kind of becomes a little bit of a challenge. But again, sometimes there is a sense that it's not the same kind of challenge in some ways that games are, of the feeling of like, I'm really solving a puzzle that I really want to get through. It's more of the, we just need to keep playing until we get the dice to roll in the right way for us to win, and that we get the right tiles to appear for us to win,
Mhm.
almost. Where it's almost like just you push the randomization of the game until you get a favorable result. So it's almost like even the meta game of rolling the game, which is weird. But as I said, I do think like, as I would not, I'd be happy to play this game multiple times with people, like, or like with different people, and that I would find enjoyable and exciting. But I don't give it much higher than the 7.25, mainly because if I were playing with the same group of people, right? If you have a board game group that you regularly play with, you might get a night or two of fun out of this, but after that, maybe not too much more. So that's why it's a little bit on the lower end, or like it's on the average end, not lower end.
Yeah, the average end.
So.
And so then for me, as I mentioned, I just changed it when you're talking. It is a 7 for me. Gosh, John, way to copy me.
Wait for you to copy me. I went first.
Yeah, it's true. Mine was a 7.5. I made it a 7. I mean, honestly, I was already thinking about if it should be 7.5 or 7. And I think I would put it 7 more just because relative to other games I would think of that I consider as 8s. Like those are games that would be more like we got to play it again, right? Like this, similar to you, like I would play it a few times or maybe only continue playing if I kept losing and the people are enjoying like the franticness of it.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, like games that are actual like 8 for me would be games that are just like very solid and does kind of have enough to keep you thinking and wanting to play it more. Whether they're long or not is not really the uh, consideration either. It's just how much it kind of keeps tickling that itch of wanting to figure it out more, as you play. And so then 7 is, yeah, it's kind of average. It is a solid score, and it's kind of just like like in a way, even though it's a big box game, it kind of feels like a filler.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that way, for me, that's also why I wouldn't push it much towards an 8.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but then as you see, right, this game has 15,000 ratings and it's also average a 7. So that's pretty, that's like a solid place for it in the list, in the rankings. And so I think the last thing I would mention with this game, since we're talking about real time and like dice rolling, rapid dice rolling, there are a few games that kind of have that mechanic too, like Space Cadets,
Mm-hmm.
Dice Duel, which is kind of like a team versus team speed dice rolling, command your own station kind of battleship game. And I actually really did enjoy that game too. But I think the issue with that one that can also be an issue with this is just the real time itself of maybe people who play board games are not that into the stress of real time. I've definitely heard that with some of like the high schoolers I had played with before playing Dice Duel. Like I thought it was so fun, like commanding a ship against another team's ship and giving orders while everyone's rolling dice. But then after the one game, like when I asked them, they'd be like, that game is too stressful. I'm like, oh, it's just rolling dice in real time. But if you don't enjoy that stress, then that is that is something that real time games are about.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the positive part with Escape compared to that is that it's a fully co-op game.
Mm-hmm.
So at least you're not stressing. You don't have the additional stress of doing something in real time against someone else.
Yeah.
Right.
You're at least working together toward a common goal and actually trying to actively support each other. So
So yeah, so 7 from both of us. 7.25 maybe. Escape, I hope you guys can try it out. It came out in 2012, so yeah, it's kind of old at this point, but still great, still solid if you think you'll enjoy real-time co-op.
You're gonna get comments about us doing all these old games again, man.
Super modern game next week.
It's not even released yet.
But yeah, I hope you guys can try out the game, real-time co-op, Escape the Curse of the Temple. And please share this video if you found this helpful in helping you see if it's something that's that is of interest to you that you'd want to try out, or just informational on this game. Share with your friends. And until next time, we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.